Or in the Q&A box.
And we'll get started in like 10 minutes.
In 12 minutes, about when the timer goes off. Or in the Q&A box.
And we'll get started in like 10 minutes.
In 12 minutes, about when the timer goes off. Or in the Q&A box.
And we'll get started in like 10 minutes.
In 12 minutes, when the timer goes off. Or in the Q&A box.
Miss Lernoff, I think there's some back from your YouTube video. You're playing or whatever.
Oh, I had muted myself. I guess I accidentally unmuted. I'm sorry.
Okay, so for those of you who just joined as attendees, we'll be starting in about 5 minutes, and a couple of our panelists still have to arrive.
Hi, Asher. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can. Hi.
Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Ms. Moriarty, I'm just letting you know that the attendees are watching, so we can, even though we can't see them, they can see us.
Okay.
And we'll get started in like probably 9 minutes, the timer says.
All right.
Thank you for all coming, and let's just hold off on adding any questions yet. And we have any questions that people put in before the event that we will talk about once we start, and then we'll open up the chat for live questions.
Hi.
Oh, hi.
So I see a few people are asking questions in the chat. Yes, this will be posted. I actually just will post the YouTube link. I believe that you can, here, I'm going to just post the YouTube link right now so that everybody can see it. So it is also live streaming right now. And yeah, it will be available afterwards. So thank you for the panelists that are here. We're still waiting for a few more. And I see the attendees starting to trickle in. So welcome, and we'll get started in about 6.5 minutes.
Hello.
Hello, welcome.
Hi.
Wonder who's here.
Maybe some of the teams that are already here, if you want to just put in the chat the school you're coming from while we wait, that could be cool.
I can introduce myself if that like clears the room if you'd like.
We're gonna introduce everyone all together in a moment.
Okay.
Yep, we still have some time before it starts. So we have the timer.
And so we just got a question from an anonymous attendee asking how is this going to work? So we'll be going over the format for the event, and it'll basically be a question and answer session after a couple brief overviews of all of our panelists.
And I see that somebody also asked about how will the innovation projects be presented this year. This is a question for your regional partner. If you are from the Northern New Jersey League, this was already answered by our regional partner that it will be presented during a 30-minute judging session. There will be one judging session for robot design and programming, for innovation project, and for core values. And there's also the opportunity to submit an additional video of your innovation project working. I am not sure that this is the case for all areas. I believe it is, but I would check with your regional partner on that.
And while we wait like 3 more minutes, just to shout out some of the teams that have joined us. West Windsor, Plainsboro, Montgomery UMS, Girl Scouts Robo Girls, team the 2020 Robotics Club, team 25231 from Fairlawn, Montgomery Upper Middle School, North Edison, Crossroads South, and Terrell Middle School.
And I see that somebody has asked, why is nothing working normally? I'm assuming that you mean, why is the Zoom format different? And that's because this event is a webinar and not a Zoom, which means that only the panelists as well as the members of Team Atomic are able to have their video be shown. And so the attendees in the audience can see us and hear us, and we can allow you to speak as well. But this way it prevents there from being people accidentally accidentally unmuting themselves from the attendees and that sort of thing. And so that's why we're choosing this webinar format. And it also allows for this Q&A box here, which is separate from the chat.
Also, a couple more questions that we can just answer before we get started. So you can only see one person. That's because right now we just spotlighted the view until we start.
Well, actually, also, sorry to interrupt, Asher, but also it might be that their own view would be in speaker view. If you switch your own view to gallery view, then you should be able to see both the slideshow that's being presented and a gallery of the panelists and members of Team Atomic. If you have yourself in just speaker view, then you'll only be able to see the slideshow and one speaker. So you can choose which view you have. And yes, this is not even the intro yet. This is we have about 50 seconds before we will start.
And also 2 more questions in the Q&A. So what will you learn today? So we're going to be learning about the innovation project and hearing from experts about this season's innovation prompt. And another question was, this is an intro. So this is an intro to the innovation project and a place where panelists will talk about their experience in the world of exercise and exercise platform creation. And there's not another way to see everyone right now.
You should be able to switch to gallery view though. Up where it says that you're viewing where you're viewing Radha Munver's screen, you should be able to click and then go to side-by-side mode. And then from there, you should be able to switch to gallery view so that you can see various people next to it.
Ms. Clarinoff, if you are on a iPad or other device, you will not be able to do this, only if you are on a laptop.
All right, everyone. Well, I think we're ready to start. The timer has finished its cycle. So welcome to the 2020 Dwight Englewood Middle School Robotics webinar. At this event, you will have the opportunity to hear from experts about this season's FLL RePlay Challenge.
Thank you for joining us today at this webinar to hear from experts to help you during the robotics season. Before we begin the webinar, I would first like to introduce all the members of our team. Our team consists of mostly 8th graders and 1 6th grader. The members are Soham Bafna, Sophia Belashoff, Eche Barak, Asher Cohen, Daniela Del Justo, Philip Levinsky, myself, Radha Munver, Musashi Shabazz, Alan Thompson, and Matt Zhu. We are grateful to also have our robotics coaches, Ms. Colleen Warenoff and Dr. Jerome Kemper, here to support us.
I joined the Dwight Englewood Middle School in 7th grade. I am now in 8th grade. Across my time at DE, there has always been one attribute that everyone on campus is working towards: making the world a better place. Dwight Englewood School is a school focused on innovation, problem solving. All these values intersect with the innovation project. Due to the extensive equipment and resources available at our school, we have been able to create many technology and fabrication-based projects.
I would like to preface this innovation prompt. All around us, there are opportunities to play and be active, from open parks to cement courts, in our classroom, and even when we're waiting in line. But more and more people are not active enough. Playing makes being active more fun. You get creative when you want to play, and it's this creativity that can help motivate us to be more active. It starts here with your critical thinking.
Last year, our FLL team presented our innovation project during the robotics season. Last year, our innovation project was an outdoor exterior elevator, accessible to those with disabilities. This was not the stop of our innovation project. We applied our innovation project to the FabLearn New York City Digital Fabrication Showcase. Our project was accepted to this event. We were one out of 600 projects that will be presenting at this conference. We will be presenting our project at FabLearn virtually next week.
We would like to extend our innovation project to further advance it to the next level. We are here today to hear from experts in the world of exercise and activities and share the opportunity to learn from these experts with other FLL teams. Innovation, inclusion, discovery, teamwork, impact, and fun are FLL's core values. They have brought us all together to hear from our panel of experts today. The format for the event will be as follows. First, each speaker will introduce themselves briefly and about the work that they have been doing. Then there will be a Q&A session with all the panelists. You may put your questions in the chat, and we will share the questions with the panelists after we go through our pre-planned questions.
You will first hear from Dr. Munver, a robotic surgeon at Hackensack University Medical Center, who will talk about physical health, exercise, and well-being. You will next hear from Dr. Fineza about virtual and in-person activity for those with disabilities. Marcel Bradford will then speak about motivation and exercise. Then Ms. Stacy Kleisch will answer questions about playground architecture and design. We will then hear from Carla Moriarty about her creation of a virtual mindfulness platform and mindfulness classes. We will end with Sean Sullivan, a Peloton app developer who will speak about creating and coding apps. We invite you to enjoy our webinar as we begin and introduce each of our speakers.
Dr. Munver is a physician and robotic surgeon at Hackensack University Medical Center in New Jersey. He will be talking about physical well-being and exercise. Dr. Munver, can you please share some of your knowledge on exercise and physical health?
First of all, I want to say thank you very much for this opportunity. And it's very admirable to see all of you interested in robotics. I'm a robotic surgeon. And what that means is I use a $2 million robot to operate on patients with cancers and other abdominal problems through minimally invasive surgical incisions. Very different than what you all do. But what I've come to learn over the years as a physician is that physical activity or exercise is an extremely important aspect for long-term health and mental benefits. It provides opportunities for all of us to create a pathway for physical and mental health. It's amazing when you think about it that 1/3 of adults in the United States are considered obese. When you think about the number of children that are obese, that's 20%. That's a staggering number. And that's adolescents or children between the ages of 2 and 19 years old. If things stay the same today, all kids born after the year 2000 may literally suffer from diabetes at some point in their lives. And up to 70% of these teens are going to become obese adults. So if you're an obese individual now, likely you'll be an obese individual when you're an adult. So this is where physical activity, exercise comes into importance. When you think about the cumulative effect of exercise, children that are born in the year 2000 or later who are obese now may not even outlive their parents. And it's an incredible thing to think about when you think, what can I do to make things better? So I came about really interestingly knowing what the benefits of physical exercise are when I started coaching Little League Baseball, as well as soccer and tennis. And what came interesting to me is that many children just didn't think about the importance of activity in playing some of these sports. When we think about the importance of activity, for adults, we recommend about 30 minutes of activity on a daily basis, but for children, 60 minutes of daily activity. And what does that mean? Daily activity can range from just exercising, playing sports, or working out in various aspects. And the regular physical activity, or the real long-term benefits, are preventing chronic diseases. Number 1, heart disease. Number 2, stroke. Number 3, cancer. Number 4, diabetes. Heart disease, cancer, and stroke are three of the most important and leading causes of death as we get older. Now, you don't think about that as a child, but certainly when you get to be my age or older, you start thinking about these much more often. What else can physical activity do? It can make our muscles stronger. It can condition our heart and our lungs. It can increase our stamina. It can improve sleep. It can minimize stress. It can also increase your chances of living longer. So when you're not physically active, you're more risk for some of these diseases. As I said, heart disease, blood pressure, stroke, and cancer.
Thank you. So now we're going to move to our next speaker. So Daniela, if you could do the introduction to that. Oh, it does not look like that member of our team is here, so I'm just going to go ahead and do the intro for her. So next you'll be hearing from Dr. Fineza. She is a physical therapist for those with disabilities. Dr. Fineza, can you please share your experience designing classes, creating programs, and working with those with disabilities?
Sure. Hi, guys. I too want to say thank you for having me here today. It's very exciting. And like Dr. Monver said, it's super admirable to see how you guys have taken an interest in this. So just a little about who I am, what I do. I'm a physical therapist and my primary focus has been in pediatrics. So I cover the span of ages 0 or birth to 21. Over the last 2 years, I've been working in different pediatric settings. So this includes private and public schools throughout New York and New Jersey, a little early intervention, which is essentially home care for birth to 3, and an outpatient sensory gym. So the patient population I work with, as you mentioned, I do work with children with disabilities. I work with children with various orthopedic conditions. They have different global developmental delays, neurological disorders, and genetic syndromes. So some common ones that you all may know of include autism spectrum disorder, Down syndrome, cerebral palsy, and traumatic brain injuries, just to name a few. I work with an extremely wide range of kids that vary in both physical ability and cognition. So I have some kids that are nonverbal. I have some kids who I can speak to in the way I'm speaking to you right now. And I have some kids who can communicate only through an augmented communication device. So like an iPad that they can that they've learned to navigate themselves and they can communicate through that device. I also have some kids that are essentially what we would say typical in gross motor ability and some that are completely wheelchair bound and dependent on a caregiver or parent to kind of get them through their days. So in my role as a PT, I am responsible for evaluating and conducting assessments of my patients' gross motor function and then determining what interventions they need to address their impairments. So in terms of physical impairments, this refers to maybe muscle weakness, increased or decreased tone, poor coordination, or poor balance. So I look at these things, figure out how to address them in order to improve their quality of life and their ability to participate in their everyday activities. And as you mentioned before, their everyday activities might be walking from classroom to classroom, or being able to play outside with their friends, or take part in community recreation, playing on like a little league team, something like that. So I work with kids, this can range from rehabbing someone from an injury or post-surgery, or to just improving or maintaining someone's range of motion so that their parents are able to transfer and dress them with more ease. So in terms of interventions, which is kind of the part we're gonna highlight, the obvious physical therapy intervention that everybody knows about is exercise. This can refer to, the use of weights or resistance bands, body weight exercises, things that you do in PE class or things that you do at the gym. But we also address manual therapy, which includes soft tissue massage, joint mobilizations. We work on gait training, which is essentially walking. So we're looking at different gait mechanics of patients, working on stair negotiation. and sometimes working with different assistive devices, such as different walkers and crutches and gait trainers. We work on neuromuscular reeducation, which is where our balance and coordination training fall into. So really working on that brain-body connection, that's what that refers to. And then therapeutic activities, which is where we address, transfers, positioning in bed, or their wheelchair or activity chair to support good posture throughout the day. And then one on its own, which is a really fun one, is aquatic therapy, which I've had some experience in. So it's a lot of fun with this population. As I'm sure a lot of you guys know, you love swimming, and these kids love it too. So it yields a lot of different benefits. Some obvious ones are cardiovascular endurance and strengthening, things like that. So all of these different intervention options, but the main goal, like you guys kind of mentioned before, is to make it fun and to make it play-based. And as a pediatric physical therapist, that's kind of where we get to get creative. I have a dance background, and this is kind of what inspired me to go into physical therapy from the start. So the way we kind of make things play-based in person, our sensory gyms and our outpatient clinics are designed to make it fun. So we have rock walls all over the place. We have different swings. We have fun adaptive equipment like tricycles, scooters, and dynamic standers. And a dynamic stander is fun. It's kind of cool. It's basically like a standing wheelchair. So someone who is in a wheelchair, we can position them in the stander and they can wheel themselves around in an upright position. And they seem to like that a lot. So those are fun to play with. And so basically my job is to find ways to turn traditional exercises into play-based activities that are more appealing and can be more motivational for our kids. So we also utilize obstacle courses a lot. With our fun environments, we're able to take advantage of this. And obstacle courses are great because you can address different things at once. So say we want to work on balance. We can utilize a balance beam. We can throw pillows on the floor for them to walk over. We have stepping stones of different heights and widths. And say we want to work on strengthening someone's arms and shoulders. So we'll put them on a scooter on their stomach and they have to propel themselves with their arms. Or we'll put them seated on a swing where they have to like yank themselves across the track with a rope. And then say we want to work on core strengthening. We'll do some sit-ups on an incline while playing catch or shooting a basketball, or working on planks with a partner, doing like high five sequences or hand games like that in a plank position. So that's kind of how we make it fun for our kids. And with the shift to teletherapy or virtual services, we've had to get super creative about how we're able to carry out these interventions in order to support our kids to prevent regression or worsening of their conditions. So we utilize technology, of course. We do a lot of sessions via Zoom or Google Meet, and thankfully, with the access to Zoom, we're able to we have a little bit more options in that sense. So one database that I use is called MedBridge, where there are actually a lot of pre-generated videos. They're instructional videos with written descriptions for various exercises. So say I do different manual therapy. If I have a kid who I massage or stretch their calves, there are videos for that made already, and I can add some notes in terms of how I want them to do it, but then they have the video showing how they're able to do that so that the parents can do that for themselves at home. And then there are different resources such as like Pink Oatmeal and Inspired Treehouse. So these are just places where pediatric therapists have kind of dumped all of their ideas into. There's a lot of interactive games. There's one where it's like an animal gross motor game. So the kid can click on an animal and then there is an exercise, say it's like a bear walk. So they click on the bear and then they're instructed to do the bear walk and it shows them how to do it. And it's just like a fun interactive game for them. And then there's things like Go Noodle, which have a lot of videos. Music and dance is a lot of fun to incorporate into our sessions. And then yoga too. So we have Cosmic Kids Yoga. I also teach yoga, so that's fun to incorporate into my practice as well.
Thank you very much, Dr. Finessa, for that introduction about what you do. We're next going to move on to Mr. Marcel Bradford, and he is a physical trainer.
So actually, Mr. Bradford is coming, but we're actually going to rearrange the order a little bit, and we're going to skip and have Alan introduce Miss Moriarty next.
Perfect.
Karwa Moriarty is a former Dwight Englewood teacher. She will be talking about her experience creating a virtual mindfulness platform. Mrs. Moriarty, can you share how you started a virtual mindfulness platform?
Sure. Can you guys all hear me? Yes. Also, I go by Miss Gomez Klein now. I left Moriarty in New Jersey. I live in Santa Monica, California now. So the virtual guided meditations started last year when we went into quarantine. And basically we thought we were only going to be doing online classes for a couple of weeks and then go back after spring break. And I talked with the principal, and I just said, I think we're going to be doing mindfulness for the rest of the time now that we're going to be home. And I think it was really beneficial to the students. But what I also did was I offered mindfulness guided meditations in the mornings for the faculty. And eventually that moved out to the larger community, to parents, to alumni, because it was a very stressful time. And there's something really quite comforting when you're in a virtual platform with other people and you're all have the same common goal to settle down and to find an inner calm and an inner peace and an inner refuge in times of stress. So that's basically, it wasn't something I decided to do. It was something that I was really kind of more led to do because I needed it. And I felt like everyone was so uncertain and so stressed out that it was beneficial. So I just kept doing it, and that's what I'm doing out here now. That's I've kind of moved from being a theater arts educator to a wellness educator, and I'm teaching meditation online, and I'm volunteering for an amazing company called Mindful Leader that's doing Meditate Together, which is every hour of the day, 24 hours a day. People are meditating together all over the world. And if anyone's interested, you just go to Mindful Leader, Meditate Together, and you can sign up, and they'll give you Zoom links for any hour of the day if you want to find a community to connect with. So that's all I got for now until you guys have questions. That's an introduction. That's answering the question, I hope.
Thank you, Ms. Gomez-Klein. And next, Philip, can you do your introduction?
Yes. So, Ms. Kleisch is an architect. Can you tell us more about your knowledge with architecture and designing playgrounds?
Hello, my name is Stacy Kleisch. I'm a registered architect in New York and New Jersey. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. My name is Stacy Kleisch. I'm a registered architect in New York and New Jersey. And for many years, I've been involved in a program called Fit by Design. And we talk about outdoor spaces, playgrounds, running paths, outdoor recreation that is specifically designed to entice people to get outside and be physically active. So these are ideas that coordinate together with activities that landscape architects may be doing or urban planners may be doing. And sometimes they're private, like they may be part of a school or they may be part of a community development, but they also can be for public parks and gardens. And basically it's a scientific study of what types of attractions get people out of their school and out of their house and out of their office and being physically active outside. So then we take those elements that we have found to be attractive to people and we incorporate those into design schemes with the anticipation that these methods and concepts will encourage people to get outside, even from a subconscious level. So even the people who are not saying, oh, you know, every day at lunch I want to walk for 45 minutes, the concepts that we're bringing into these outdoor spaces are ones that will encourage even generally passive people to get outside, and they could be playing, being physically fit, or they could be intentionally going through an exercise routine. But basically coming up with design elements that get people outside, whether it's a specific playground or other elements in an outdoor recreational space that will get people physically active.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Eche, can you now do your introduction to Mr. Sullivan?
Sean Sullivan is an app developer for the business side of Peloton. What is your experience designing apps?
Hi. So my experience has been, so first of all, I don't know if anyone has heard about Peloton, but we are an exercise bike company. So we created in-house a exercise bike, which and a treadmill, which we distribute across the country, and then we design in-house an app and have a few studios where we send off both live classes and pre-recorded classes to people all over the country. So there we are over 1 million subscribers, so it's a pretty good business right now. So my experience building apps is really specific to this case. Most of the time, so it's a very broad question, but our experience has been trying to how do we engage people on a particular platform? So for instance, we use social media a lot in order to try to get people to participate. And I got a question that says, do people like the badge of leaderboard more? They like both a lot. That's why we're pretty successful, if I would like to say, because and both of those both allow for the social aspect. So you bring in a social aspect, so it's not just you on your own. You're able to, even from the remote place of your home or whatever, you're able to work, have a Facebook group where you all ride at the same time, and that you encourage each other to participate and to share. It's really we're trying to allow people to use their own networks to have something that they're proud of that they do, and then so that's a really great motivator, and one of the reasons that we keep people exercising and trying to be their best selves.
Thank you. We will now circle back to Mr. Bradford since he has arrived. He is a personal trainer.
Hi, how are you?
Sorry, one second. Marcel Bradford is a personal trainer and he will share his thoughts about motivation and exercise. Mr. Bradford, how do we get people to motivated to do exercise?
I would say the best way to motivate people is to find a core value of why you want to change. And I think you'll be able to sustain the ups and downs that come with, constantly, doing something and those bad days that you might have. So I think I would say finding your inner why.
Great, thank you, Mr. Jackson. And we're going to talk a lot more about motivation when we open up the chat to questions. But finally, we also have a Dwight Englewood student, Livia, who is here. And if you just wanted to introduce yourself and talk a little bit about what you do on the upper school robotics team, that would be great.
Yeah, okay. So as I've been greatly introduced, my name's Liv, and I'm on the critical mass robotics team in the upper school at Dwight Englewood. And I'm part of the outreach and engineering notebook team. So one of my main jobs is that I reach out to different people in the field depending on what we need. And I try to establish relations with different people. And along with that, I also keep mark and like what is it called? I keep records for what we do during meetings. So I'm like a scribe of some sorts. And another really big thing I do is that like I work with a lot of the outreach opportunities where we try to like help different organizations with what we know, and also like talk to younger generations about robotics and how it's like so amazing, and like why you should like look into it if you'd like. And like we try to like, one thing our school did last year was we worked with a Girl Scout troop, and I think we're doing that this year, but because of COVID it's different. But we work with a Girl Scout troop to empower young women into like looking into the STEM field, because a lot of the time we are pushed away from them as females. And yeah, that's like basically what I do on the team.
Thank you, Livia. We will now start with some questions that we have received in the preliminary Google form from various teams, and then we will open up the Q&A chat for teams to answer live questions after we go through these. Asher, would you like to start with the first question?
Yeah, and can you just stop the slideshow so that everybody can see the whole group?
I will do that. Perfect.
So, so just to all the panelists, so a lot of these questions are probably geared towards one of you, since since people submitted these questions for a specific profile, but a lot of the questions apply to everyone. So the first question from Dwight Englewood Robotics team is, how can you engage physically challenged people in exercise? And this was intended for Dr. Fineza, but anybody else can feel free to chime in.
So that's a great question. Kind of like what Marcel alluded to a little bit earlier. You want to find a motivator, right? So with our kids, they can be motivated by, it's always a personal preference. So working in pediatrics, you kind of have to get to know your patients a little bit better, a little bit more on a personal level. You have to build a little bit of a stronger rapport with them in order to get them to do what it is that you're trying to accomplish during that session. So say I have one kid, one patient that I see currently, he loves wrestling, loves WWE. So, and he has Down syndrome. And so sometimes it's very difficult. We have a very difficult time during our sessions to kind of get him motivated. But if I'm able to kind of make it about wrestling, he becomes more engaged. So say we're working on balance, and he looks like he wants to like knock stuff down all the time. He always like is attempting to like body slam things. So if we're working on balance, I'll have him stand on like a really big pillow, and I'll throw him a stuffed animal to catch, and then he's able to kind of like body slam him onto the pillow. And it's constant like getting up, falling down, getting up, falling down. Not only are we working on balance, we're working on his coordination, his ability to get from the floor and to standing repeatedly, and it's building his cardiovascular endurance because we're doing continued repetitions of it at a time. So with every kid, there is something that will motivate them, whether it's music, with some of our babies, sometimes it's food to get them to roll over. So you figure out what exactly it is that the child has an interest in, and you utilize that into your sessions.
Thank you, Dr. Vanessa. The next question that we have is, what are the steps for developing an exercise-based app? Mr. Sullivan, would you like to answer that question?
You are muted.
Yes. Yeah, so most software development uses what's called an agile style. So, which is basically you try to produce the smallest viable product, and then you iterate on that continually. So then you add things based on features. So that's how I've seen a lot of apps being developed in the past. In our particular case, the core functionality, which was having like a leaderboard, live classes, and was defined at the beginning of the app. Like, so the founders got together, they were all previous either business partners or knew one another in some capacity, and they said, hey, this is something that we would really, really like to have. The founder knew that need, and he thought that there was a strong business opportunity. So he had that vision and of those kind of things, and they made a Kickstarter. They were able to scrounge together a really simple prototype, and they were able to pitch it to get some investor money in order to start building out those features one at a time. People were filming things in basements, really just trying to get things together, and which is fairly common for a startup where you have to bootstrap your application in order to get it to a functional state. So yeah, that's normally the process of how these things start.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Sullivan. And so our next question is for Ms. Gomez-Klein, and it is just pretty simple. So what are the important things to think about when creating a virtual platform for mindfulness or exercise?
Well, I think what's important to think about for a virtual platform is engaging people on the other side of the screen, right? Because you don't, unless you can engage people, it's you have no idea if you're actually reaching them, right? So something that I started doing that worked, and I'm sure a lot of times, like there's a lot of yoga online. I mean, so many people have gone online since the pandemic because what choice is there? And I appreciated what Mr. Sullivan was talking about with Peloton, with the screens. There's like the rowing machines that have the screens. Like so many of these exercise machines now have a virtual leader who's engaging the person so that they feel motivated to engage in whatever the platform is. So in my case, it's mindfulness. So a lot of times if we're doing breathing exercises, we'll use the hands, inhaling up and exhaling down. And if I can see all the hands are moving in the screen, then I know that people are engaged. It's also really important in a live virtual class or whatever platform to make sure that you use people's names, that you greet people, so I mean, I would do that anyway because, it's nice to see my old students like, hi, Rada, and Liv, I know from the upper school, and Asher. And, so to connect with people that or don't know, so when I'm doing, when I volunteer for Mindful Leader, it's most of the people I've never seen before. So to greet them, to know that, people are quarantined all over the world, and they're being able to come together through these virtual platforms, and it's an extraordinary way to build community, which is another part of the mission at Dwight Englewood. So it was kind of an interesting way to move through the pandemic in a healthful, I don't want to sound corny, but loving way, you know, to kind of keep your heart engaged in it. Did that answer your question, Asher?
Yeah, that was perfect. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, so our next question will be for pretty much anybody who wants to answer it. And this is from the 2020 Robotics Club team. So what are the possible economic effects to a community when humans don't use provided playgrounds and parks? Maybe Ms. Gleish, if you want to answer that, that would be great.
Sure. So there are a number of things. First of all, if a playground, for example, sometimes parks, or they're not always strictly a park, but sometimes a green space is put into place in a community with the anticipation that it will bring people out. But people, especially in communities where people don't have a backyard and they don't have access to green space at their home, they may come out and use that public space, even if it's just an empty grassy lot. But other times it is important for the community to come up with strategies to engage people to use that green space. So the negative economic impact of people not using a space, of course, are related to the fact that they won't be getting fresh air, they won't be out exercising, they won't be, so there will be negative financial impact from a health perspective. But there are so many different ways to use those open spaces. Sometimes it becomes a weekly farmers market, or sometimes it becomes a space where schools can gather and teach classes outside. Or, you know, it doesn't always have to automatically be a playground, but it can be a variety of different reasons why people would gather outside. So having those spaces available to a community, it's very, very rare that it wouldn't be used whatsoever. You know, even if it becomes a community garden, there's so many different reasons why people use outdoor space. And I will be honest with you, in suburban communities particular, there's so much demand for outdoor space, even though people already have backyards. But there's something about the opportunity of gathering. Then when we look at urban communities, how they use their green outdoor spaces, it takes on another whole level, because it becomes a backyard to a lot of people who may not have any outdoor space as part of their living area at all. So it's rare that a space wouldn't be utilized at all, but it is important to come up with strategies to kind of give cues to how the space can be used, and that encourages a healthy use of that outdoor space. One of the very popular uses of outdoor space that often is in conflict with what a community expects is sometimes spaces that are not intended for skateboarding get taken over by a skateboarding community. And sometimes that can be a little bit hazardous to have multiple communities using that space if a skateboard community has moved in to utilize it. And sometimes they need to set up schedules or compartments of the way spaces can be shared. Thank you.
Our next question is, what are the important health benefits of exercise? If you would like to answer that, Dr. Munter.
All right. I think just something that comes off the top of my head, one of the most important benefits that come with exercising is the mental health benefit, because as you're working out, your body, your brain releases endorphins, which is chemical stimulants such as dopamine and serotonin, and that manages and moderates your mood swings. So, you know, those chemical reactions give a happy feeling to your brain. So that's the benefit I feel like that comes off the top of my head.
I like to play upon that. As a physician, one of the biggest things that we're concerned about in this day and age is burnout. Burnout can affect not only physicians, but it can affect anyone in any profession, even students. And one of the things that our hospital is really doing on a daily basis is sending out blast emails regarding all of the different opportunities that are available for us in terms of stress relief. And these include meditation, yoga, walking, and exercise. So exercise is a huge stress buster. So alluding to what you were talking about, Marcel, the stress and the mental wellness is definitely an aspect of physical exercise. I know that on days when I'm just tired or just not feeling well, I'll go out and play some tennis, and it's amazing. No matter how tired I am, I'm energized the minute I get on the court. And one of the things, as a busy surgeon, I always, always, always make time for physical exercise. My outlet is sports, and in particular, tennis. And I started joining a group of guys who play on Saturday mornings from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. Now, you think after a busy day, you don't want to wake up that early on a Saturday morning. You want to sleep in. I wake up at 6 o'clock. I'm really regretting why I even did this. I get out on the court at 7 o'clock, and by 7:15, I'm so energized. I come back at 9 o'clock and I'm ready to take over the world. So, the mental aspect is absolutely there. And of course, we talked about the other health benefits: cancer reduction, diabetes reduction, heart disease reduction, and stroke reduction. 3 of these are the biggest reasons why people die in the United States. So starting a good exercise regimen now, and the mentality, whether it's sports or whether it's walking or whether it's jogging or whether it's working out on a Peloton, anything that can get your heart rate up and get you moving on a daily basis can become a routine, especially starting at a young age. Because really what we're trying to do is we're trying to cut the morbidity epidemic that's happening in this country and in the world.
Thank you. So these next 2 questions are 2 questions that are for our robotics team in general. So we're not going to spend as much time on them, but we'll quickly just answer them off. So this first question is both questions are from the 2020 Robotics Club. So this being a virtual season, did you separate your team into groups? So our team has 10 members and 2 coaches, and we did separate our teams into groups. So we split the team first into 2 different groups, one being programming, coding, and the robot game, and one being core values and innovation project. And Rada and I, who are basically the core values and innovation heads, which makes us good for helping to lead this event. And then we have 2 other captains, Soham and Sophia, who are programming and the robot game that we use to divide our team. And then the second question, which Rada can answer, is do we use social media, YouTube flyers, or email letters to do outreach for our program?
If I may add to the last question, we also do meet for twice a week as an entire team. And for the second question, we do use social media and flyers and emails to help for outreach for our program. I know, like right now, this is being live streamed to YouTube, and additionally, we like to use posters and flyers to get awareness in our school. So we find that is very effective, and we are occasionally featured on our school Instagram account. So I hope that answers that question. Our next question is from Team Bright Minds, and do you have patients with dementia? And if so, how do you help them? I believe that one is directed towards Dr. Finessa.
So currently, I don't work with anyone with dementia, but as a student on my clinical rotations, I did do a lot of work with patients in dementia in the nursing home. It was something that we worked very closely with their nurses and with their caregivers because medical management is a big part of it. Oftentimes with patients with dementia, they go through something which is called sundowning. So when the sun goes down, as the day goes through, they tend to exhibit more severe symptoms during that time. So one thing we have to take into account is what time of the day are we able to see them. Another thing is sometimes in nursing homes, you have to see patients to more than one at a time. So sometimes I would have 2 patients at a time. And so you have to plan strategically about patient placement. Depending on the severity of the dementia, you want to make sure that they're in a safe environment. It doesn't matter, dementia or no dementia, safety is number one. So again, you get to know your patient, you get to know like what kind of triggers them, and what kind of things calm them down. Kind of like the whole mindfulness thing, it plays into that. Tai Chi, different yoga techniques. It's very good to utilize those techniques with that patient population. And so we had really good effects with that. I had one patient who we would, when we would go walking around the nursing home, we would sing songs because sometimes she would stop and just freeze. And in order to keep her going, I would sing a song so that she would kind of have the tempo and we would continue walking. So you utilize different techniques in order to get them to do the exercises that you're trying to do with them.
Thank you. And so next, this is a question for Mr. Bradford. So what are the best exercises for kids, the best forms of exercise?
I would say for kids, I think just getting out and playing sports. I think all around, it's going to show you how to work with others, how to be a unit. Also, you're going to have the physical benefits from it, from running around, the cardiovascular benefits. Other exercises you could do, just walking around the track, any type of bicycling. That's kind of an easy thing for kids to do. I would say those.
Thank you. The next question that we have is for Livia. She is, as you mentioned earlier, she is one of the students on our FTC high school robotics team. So how do you raise awareness about different aspects of the challenge and season through outreach for your FTC team? Livia, if you would like to answer that one. How do you raise awareness about different aspects of the challenge in season through outreach for your FTC team?
I'm not very clear on the question.
So how do you raise awareness for your team during the season?
During the season, well, usually most of our publicity comes from robotics comps that we have. So during robotics comps, we usually have a lot of like trifle boards, and we sometimes bring LED lights to the stands so that we have like a very like crisp cutout of like what we are and like who we are, and it also brings a lot of attention to us, and that's usually how we get ourselves out there. And then along with that, if you're talking about like in the field of like different STEM majors, a lot of that comes from like emailing them and like opportunities. Like I went to an arboretum in Glen Rock, and I ended up meeting a Rutgers professor there, and I ended up getting their contact information. And that is just like taking opportunities as they come, and also like during robotics competitions, just like making a name for yourself along with having like a good like a bot with you, like yeah.
Thank you, Livia. Our next question is directed towards Dr. Munver. How do products get people more healthy and exercising?
So that's a great question. So there are simple things like jump ropes, exercise floor ladder to increase footwork if you're playing any kind of sport. There are forearm clasps if you're a tennis player like me to strengthen your forearms. There are resistance bands. These are simple things to get you just, in your room. A lot of us are doing virtual school these days, right? When you're home, you have a break, you can do some of these things right in between your classes, not during your classes though. And of course, there are more complex things, like we talked about the Peloton. There are exercise machines, there are other kind of stationary bikes. Those are bigger investments, but I find oftentimes those are things that your parents are going to be looking at to purchase. Many times they get purchased and don't get used very often. So it's got to be something that it's got to motivate you. You have to take that interest to say, this is something that I want that's going to make me want to do something like this. So I think these are some of the products that can get you more and more active. Of course, there's also virtual reality. There are VR headsets where you can use and that can kind of make you run or even play a sport on VR. So you're actually getting those arms and muscles and legs moving. There are a lot of different things. So people who are gamers can do that rather than just sitting in front of their computers. So there are a lot of different products out there, but I think really what it has to be, it has to be stimulated from your interest. What is it that you're trying to gain from this? How are you trying to get that aspect of your sports side or just your general fitness side involved?
Perfect. Thank you. So we only have 2 more questions and we'll finally get to the Q&A. So next, this is for Mr. Sullivan. So what's some of the advice that you can give to beginner app developers?
I think in the beginning, there's a couple different things. So, Unity's pretty easy to learn. If you're trying to choose an engine, just try to do some research beforehand. Try to, I think one of the most important things that you can do is have a concrete idea of what you're attempting to build. Because it's very easy when you're coding to have what's called scope creep, which is that your initial goal, you keep expanding it past where you think that it should go, and you don't accomplish as much as an end result. So trying to focus on building out a small little piece at a time. Don't try to build the entire thing at once. Try to make a list of what your priorities are, and then build on top of them. So for an example, what the first thing that you should do whenever you're developing whatever platform you decide to build, do what's called the hello world, which is you make your program just say the words hello world or have a button or something like that. You start small and then you build off of those. And then that's how you can get to success a lot faster.
Thank you, Mr. Sullivan. And the last question that we have before we move on to our live questions that have been put in the chat. With social distancing and COVID-19 restrictions in place, what are some of the recommendations for people to exercise and have fun? Mr. Bradford, would you like to answer that? Or anybody can chime in.
Mr. Bradford, you are actually muted right now.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I would say resistance bands is a good way. So this way you can keep social distance. You can do that at your house. You can take that outside to the park with you. Any type of open field tracks. Stadium steps, kind of like running up and down the bleachers of some arenas. Regular calisthenics, push-ups, sit-ups, squats, lunges, exercise like that you could do with little to no weight.
All right.
Thank you. So now we're going to get to the Q&A chat that you guys have all put questions into. And so for these questions, we're just going to leave them open to anyone on the panel who would like to respond. So we'll try to give everybody who wants to respond a chance to respond. So again, this is the perfect time to start adding questions to the Q&A. And so we'll start with the most liked questions, which are on the top of my Q&A. And that first question is, what is the primary reason why people are not excited to be active?
I can handle this one. Being active is not a lot of fun unless you're doing something you enjoy. And for, as I said, for someone like me, and also for Mr. Bradford, you know, we like sports. And if you're doing a sport that you really enjoy, then being active is no longer work. For those of us who think that the only purpose of being active is just to, you know, not become obese, and just to increase your longevity and minimize your risk for getting diseases as you get older, that's more of a difficult task to motivate people. So when someone says, I'm going to buy an exercise bike, I'm going to do it 30 minutes a day just so I can stay healthy, that's not the most fun activity unless you make it into a game, or unless you challenge yourself, or unless you're competing with other people and say, hey, let's all do this together. And that's why, you know, people go to spin classes, people go to, you know, bike together, or they jog together, or walk together. It's a lot more fun when you can do something with somebody else. So I think when you make it into something that's enjoyable for you, it's no longer considered work.
Perfect. Thank you, Dr. Monfort.
So our next question in the top of my Q&A is, what are some playground equipments that help people with disabilities? If anybody would like to answer that, that's probably aimed towards.
Please, I'll give some response to that. So a number of years ago, almost every playground that you went to had the same types of activities. So you would see a standard swing set, you would see a seesaw, you would see a merry-go-round, you would see a slide. And almost every one of those things now is non-existent in a playground. So you don't see, children would go on the merry-go-round and intentionally or accidentally let go and go flying off the merry-go-round, injuring themselves or people around them. Same with the seesaw, same with the slide. People were falling off slides. So not only has playground equipment changed for traditionally abled people, but we also are incorporating a lot more variety into playground equipment that differently abled people can enjoy. So there will be different surface materials, so it's easier to walk and to crawl and to roll over the surface of a playground. There will be more cushion and comfort in the playground material, and also more give if you were to fall down on a playground, that you would be safer on that material. The playground equipment also is now located differently than it used to be. So things would be closer together in an older playground. Now there's more space between them, so it's easier to get over and around and through playground equipment. So the playground equipment is not as clearly defined as what you're supposed to be doing on the playground equipment as it might have been when it were a swing set or a slide or a merry-go-round. Now the playground equipment doesn't really tell you exactly what you're supposed to do. You can enjoy it however you are able to enjoy it. So there are so many more varieties of ways that you can use the playground equipment that is currently installed in new playgrounds. So that's a really great question.
Perfect, thank you. The next question at the top of my Q&A is, what has not been solved in your fields that is a problem? So that can be answered by anybody.
I'll take this question again. So every single year we have a Fit by Design conference in the New York metropolitan area to talk about the ways that people utilize outdoor space and things that communities can do to make it more available to people. How do they identify spaces that can become green community spaces? And when I call it green, it doesn't always mean that it's a garden. It is just an outdoor space that is set aside for people to enjoy being outdoors. And sometimes it will include picnic areas or playground areas or areas for playing basketball or roller skating or skateboarding. But it's something that we continue to meet year after year after year because the needs of our communities continue to evolve and change. So in the same way that I mentioned that playground equipment has changed, every year we find out new things that are working out really well, and we learn about things that are becoming problems. And we continue to meet as a group of architects and designers so that we can share our best practices and help everybody come up with what they should be implementing in their communities to get people outside, active, getting fresh air, and staying physically fit.
I kind of want to add to that. I would say, I don't know what hasn't, well, I know one thing that's not helping is in this technology such as TikTok, Snapchat, video games, Fortnite. See, these things are gravitating the kids to go play in an alternate fantasy reality instead of being outside and doing physical activity like they normally would, like how most of us grew up. Now, with these outlets, it's kind of giving them more of an excuse to stay home and socialize and interact with their friends on a virtual basis. So I would say that's definitely not helping. But I think if you like for instance, my son, I have him playing football. Today was football. Tomorrow's tennis lessons. He played lacrosse last year. So I'm just trying to get him out there, whether he's good or not, just engaging, physically learning how to be cohesive with one unit, how to plan, how to work together, how to follow instructions from an authoritative figure. I think those, as well as the physical activity aspects of it. So I think, I mean, I don't know if that answered the question, but that's just kind of want to throw that out there.
I do want to add on to that, Mr. Bradford. That is a good point. It is a problem in the sense of sometimes we have too many things at our fingertips and too many things that are available to us and already pre-made for us that we don't have to do too much thinking on our own. So say for instance, something that we address, especially in our kids with autism, is are they able to engage in appropriate play? Are they able to imitate? Things like that. So say we have a boat swing and I have someone in the boat and I'm swinging them and I'll say like, oh, so where are we going in the boat? And some kids will look at me like, what do you mean, where are we going? We're in the swing. And I'm like, I want to hear like, we're going to Mars, we're going to Jupiter. Like, I want to hear the imagination. And so sometimes that is a problem that we run into a lot. And at our facility, we are lucky enough to, have some things available to us that can kind of stimulate that play and stimulate that creativity and imagination in the kids. Because you have to think like not everybody has access to technology. With the pandemic, we've had a lot of families who we've had to provide different things for. So schools providing Chromebooks for families who don't have their own technology at home. You have to think of how do we utilize the resources that we have in our environment in order to accomplish the same goals and in order to make it fun for ourselves and for our kids so that, they are engaging in the same type of fun play that the rest of us are engaging in. So that was a good point to bring up. Thanks.
Perfect. So I think we'll move on to our next question. And this is geared specifically towards Ms. Kleisch and then Mr. Bradford. And this question is, how do you create play spaces that motivate people to be active?
Great. So one of the things that really attracts people to get outside is having some sort of large, obvious structure. So in our green spaces, if we have some sort of a gazebo or a monumental stair. So a monumental stair, for example, is not a traditional staircase that we use to get from one floor to another, but it's a staircase that has longer, wider steps. And people really, really love sitting on staircases. So that might seem counterintuitive to exercise. But for example, if people work in an office building near a green space that has some park benches along it, not that many people can sit on the park benches. So when lunchtime comes, they'll look out the window and say, oh, the park benches are already being used. I'll just eat at my desk today. But if there's a monumental stair somehow integrated into the park or integrated into the entry of the building, or some way to get from the building to the parking lot, or to get from the school to the street, a monumental stair is something that always attracts people. And it gets them climbing up and down stairs. At some point, they'll sit on the stairs and eat lunch, or sit on the stairs and gather with their friends, or something like that. But it's a space that connects people. Having a large, colorful playground area, like instead of the elements I mentioned before, like a slide and a merry-go-round and seesaws, now playgrounds have a large climbing structure. And there'll be some activities that you can utilize from the ground, and some activities that you climb through at a lower level, and then other elements that you may climb up or go across bars and things like that. So if it's just a stationary physical challenge, it might not attract people at the same level as something that's got a lot of different things going on that make you say, oh, how am I going to use this? How am I expected to use this? And it starts your imagination and creativity exploring that play structure, in addition to just seeing and utilizing the play structure in a traditional way. Plus, more people are able to use it at the same time and in lots of different ways.
Yeah, I would just add to that and say, yeah, the basic park, like over here in Bergen County, there's plenty of parks that have the walk around tracks. There's some grass there. They have a playground. So, for instance, during the pandemic, I took my son over there to teach him how to ride a bike. My daughter went walking around the track when we were doing that, and then being creative. What I had, football season was coming, so I got us a football. We all played catch, keeping everybody engaged and active. And then I also would make them a little bit more competitive, going against each other, which is healthy, having that competitive, fuel.
Thank you. The next question is for Dr. Munver. If robots are engaged in keeping people active, how expensive can it get?
So thank you. That's a great question. So as a surgeon, most of my surgeries are anywhere between 2 and 3 hours, and sometimes surgeries can last 5 hours or 6 hours, where I'm standing the entire time with no breaks. Interestingly, the robot that we use for surgery has actually made it easier to not stand for so much time. We actually sit at a robotic console, and it's like a video game where we have joysticks and we control the robotic instruments that are inside a patient. So from that aspect, this $2 million robot that I use in the operating room is actually making me less active than more active. So because of that, I need to offset it by coming home and getting out and becoming more active. Now, there are robots that are being in development that are helping, especially the elderly, become more active, because a lot of the elderly are more sedentary. They're at home, they're not doing as much. We see a lot of these futuristic movies where they have robot companions. There are also going to be robot trainers that are going to be out there and encouraging individuals to get out, go for walks, do exercises, encourage you to do more push-ups if you're doing them at home, and even potentially play some sports, right, Mr. Bradford? There's a potential, but that market is still in evolution at the present time. And I do imagine it will be quite expensive in the beginning, but as more competitors are out there, I think those prices will come down. And I think that by the time all of you on the robotics team are probably in your 20s and maybe 30s, we'll see the role of robots involved in us in reducing the obesity in this country.
Dr. Munver, our next question is, there are some people with specific types of disabilities. They cannot walk or do any sort of exercises. What are the different types of structures or equipment that you guys use for them? What are the different types of exercises that you teach them to do? So I believe Dr. Finezza can answer that.
Sure, that's a great question. So kind of like I mentioned before, for kids that are essentially wheelchair bound or non-ambulatory, as we would say, we have a bunch of different pieces of equipment that we can utilize with them. So depending on the place you're in, depending on the setting, so say in the school that I worked at in New York, it was a special education school, and it was crazy. Like, you walk into the school and the hallways are stacked with different adaptive tricycles, different adaptive scooters. And so for kids who are wheelchair bound, you want to think about what exactly the goal for them is. So if I have someone in a wheelchair, my goal for them is not for them to be able to do jumping jacks. I need to support their medical condition, so oftentimes it's to support their ability to sit up straight in the wheelchair so that they don't get pressure sores on their sacrum. So how do I address that? I will utilize my session to get them in the dynamic stander. We also have standers that support just general weight bearing, right? Because evidence to support bone growth and bone density is weight bearing. So we essentially lay them down, we strap them in with the appropriate laterals and seat belts and things like that, and we gradually bring them from a horizontal position to an upright position they can tolerate. And those standers are usually on wheels, and we can kind of wheel them around the hallway so they can kind of wave and see, engage in their school environment that way. Another thing that we like to do for them are the tricycles. So for someone who is sitting in a wheelchair, say they're unable to move their legs on their own, we want to work on their range of motion to support the integrity of their joints. So rather than me pushing and pulling on their legs, I'll put them in the tricycle, again, strap them in appropriately, and the pedals do the range of motion for them. The other fun thing that I mentioned before is aquatic therapy. We utilized this a lot at the school that I was at. We were lucky enough to have a therapeutic pool. So those kids, we would work on postural stability. So I would have them, kind of holding them in a seated position and waving them back and forth in the water. The water provided different resistance. It also provided a stretch to their trunk. So those are some fun things that we are able to do with them. So it's not always about teaching them exercises that they can do, but kind of doing what I can and then figuring out what techniques I can transfer to their caregivers, their parents, and their nurses so that they can do the carryover at home, because that's the most important thing.
Thank you very much. So we have four or five more questions. What specific actually, we're gonna go a different one. Miss Gomez Klein, what types of activities related to mindfulness can keep people active during a pandemic? You're muted, by the way.
Thank you. I agree with what some of the other panelists mentioned before, getting away from the screen. So, I mean, honestly, any kind of mindful engagement that is away from technology, because we are like Zoom bots, get up, go outside. I'm outside right now, go to nature, go engage in something that does not involve your phone or a screen or a game. And that, that way you can really kind of be with yourself. I think we're using so much technology and stuff that's outside of ourselves, and it's like brain drain, and also to be, to really be kind to yourself. A lot of times when I'll start a guided meditation, I'll have people, massage their own skull or their arms. I think because a lot of us are isolated from other people, just touching ourselves or, hugging ourselves, just the physical contact can be really, really helpful. So that's one thing. But yeah, get up and take a walk. You know, notice 3 things that you might not have ever noticed before. You know, listen to things that you might not have ever heard before. You know, a lot of times people feel like, oh, you know, there's so much distraction, there's so much this. You know, allow yourself to take notice and to bring that, you know, to find the beauty and to find the gratitude in these things that we might otherwise take for granted. That's usually a really helpful mindfulness practice.
Thank you, Ms. Gomez-Klein. And another question we have here is, what specific programming and design go into making an app? And I assume that this is geared mostly towards Mr. Sullivan.
Yeah, hi. Specifically, so it really depends. There's a lot of different languages out there. Sorry, I think I'm echoing. Yeah, so there's a lot of specific languages that you can use out there. Personally, we develop our languages are we develop for Android, so we use um, the Android SDK is what they call it. So it's free, and you can download it, and it'll run. You can make an app fairly quickly and get it directly ported onto your phone. If you want to actually run something on iPhones, you got to pay $100 to Apple in order to get that running. And they mostly do their priority language. I think they were doing Swift last time I checked. I mentioned Unity, which is a 3D game editor, but you can also use it to develop applications, and it cross compiles into multiple languages. Those are just the ones off the top of my head, but I'm sure that there's many lists out there. You know, when I was starting to learn to do some app development, I basically just downloaded the Android SDK because I had an Android phone and wrote up some kind of things. There's some really helpful tutorials, and I just got started. Like I said before, it's an iterative project. So try to build something small, have like specific goals that you want to go to next, and so that you can really plan them out, because planning is the key when you're doing programming. Think I answered the questions?
Thank you. I believe that answered the question. If you guys were to make a website or app for exercising, what are the features that you guys would add? So whoever wants to answer that.
I would add the feature of showing a video of the workout. I think that's a great feature to have for people that might not know exactly what the name of that exercise, what it entails. So having a demonstrative video would definitely help. That should definitely be a feature.
And does anybody else want to share anything that's any other people, or are we good here?
Just social aspects really help reinforce like doing things. So if you have a video, like if you're taking a video of yourself, being able to share it with friends, or be able to, you know, send things about your workouts or work out with friends, because you know, being able to be outside, I agree, is one, and active is a really hard thing to marry with the, you know, application. So trying to think about how you want your functionality to aid the exercise process rather than inhibit it is really important.
Thank you, Mr. Sullivan. And so we've gone through all the Q&A questions that we had, and what we just want to do quickly is Ms. Larinoff, the middle school robotics coach and innovation coordinator, is going to talk briefly about the iterative design process. And while she does that, if anybody has any final questions that they want to ask the panel, please put that in the Q&A, and we can do that after Ms. Larinoff does her quick talk about the iterative design process, and then we will try to unmute some people. If you want to say anything like an encouraging word or something at the very end, just raise your hand and we can allow you to talk.
Okay, thank you, Asher. I saw quite a few questions come in about the way that the format will be this year. And one thing that I wanted to say about that is that it's going to depend on your regional partner. So we're not going to answer specific questions about that. In most regions, I believe it will be virtually, including in the North New Jersey region, but that's something that you should ask your regional partner about. So the other thing that I just wanted to talk about really briefly is just to make sure that everybody feels encouraged to really start this innovation process and go through this iterative design process. Brainstorm, think about the problems, use the information that you learned today from the experts and from other research that you have done to come up with some great ideas, and then brainstorm some more and define a problem. Think really specifically about what it is that you're trying to solve, and think about the people that you're trying to create a solution for, right? Using empathy in the design process is really important. You want to think about their needs. So for example, are you trying to create something for children with disabilities, for children in inner cities? Like, what are you specifically trying to create, and what are the problems that they may face? And then you want to really get your whole team in on it. So even though on our team, we have people working on innovation project and people working on robot design, everybody's really working together in the brainstorming portion, and then they're breaking into smaller groups. And you want to prototype and then iterate, meaning you want to keep on getting feedback, changing your design, seeing what works, seeing what doesn't work. If after one try you think you have a great product, it could still be really much better. So you really want to keep working at it. And then the last thing I wanted to say is, even though you are mostly middle school students in FLL, you really are capable of so much. So you see this whole webinar tonight was designed by the middle schoolers of Dwight Englewood School. And so Asher and Radha, along with the rest of the team, planned everything. And they were able to do that in just less than 2 weeks. They put everything together. Radha made these beautiful slides. Asher contacted all the people, and just, being able to do that as middle schoolers, I want you to realize that you really can do anything. So don't feel that just because you're students that you can't really do much. You really can have an impact with your innovation project. So I want to thank all of our panelists for attending. Really appreciate your time. And I also just wanted to thank everybody from all of the members of Team Atomic and the other robotics clubs or the robotics teams at Dwight Englewood School for coming. And if any of the robotics members want to put their video on and just show yourselves, I know we've seen mostly Asher and Radha, so if we want to just have everybody else come on as well, we can do that.
And also, we do want to give some people a chance to maybe say something if they want to. So attendees, people viewing this webinar, if you would like to say something, just raise your hand and we can allow you to speak. Okay, Harry Menon, I'll allow you to talk. You just have to unmute yourself.
Yeah, so I would like to thank everyone for hosting this event. It was really interesting today, learning about many, many things. Yeah, I found it very interesting. Thank you for holding today's event.
Thank you for coming.
Joining us. Does anybody else, if anybody else wants to say something, or else we'll, okay, we have a bunch of hands, so I'm just going to go through them. Amrita, you're now permitted to talk.
I just wanted to say thank you a lot for this webinar, and it was really informational and helpful for innovation project to learn about all of this.
Thank you very much. There's another Amrita person. If that's someone different, I'll unmute yourself.
Yeah, that's me. I just want to thank everybody for because it really helped and it really, educated me and taught me a lot of stuff. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next person is K. I believe it won't allow us to allow you to talk since you have an older version of Zoom. If you have anything to say, you may put it in the chat.
Another Rita person. You can unmute yourself and speak now as well.
I would just like to say thank you because it's always nice to see something like this happen that involves a lot of teams.
No problem. There's another Amrita. They would like to talk to you.
And I see Ms. Kleich, the architect, has shared her contact information in the chat and says if anybody has any questions or wants design support from an architect, you can contact her. And then Ms. Gomez-Klein also put some information, her contact information in the chat as well.
There's another Rita, if you want to unmute yourself, or else we will proceed. Okay. Is there anybody else, or MSK again? I'm sorry, we cannot. Oh wait, now we can. Okay, let's. MSK, we're not able to allow you to speak. Sorry.
The next person is Rania, if you would like to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm from Bright Minds, and I have a question to the personal trainer. Are there options right now where clients and trainers can meet and like schedule workouts, kind of?
Yes. Now, during COVID, in the Northeast area, trainers can meet with their clients one-on-one and live in contact. Yes.
Okay, so I think that we have pretty much answered all the questions. And so thank you again to for everybody, all the panelists for coming. Thank you again for everybody who came. Thank you to all of our robotics team. On behalf of Dr. Kemper, the other coach, and myself, we think that you guys did an amazing job tonight. So we're very, very impressed by how well that you ran this. And I think that you are an inspiration to all of the other teams on how poised you were and just how well that you ran everything tonight. So thank you very much to the whole Team Atomic, especially Radha and Asher and everybody else as well. So thank you. We're going to end this now. And I hope everybody got some inspiration tonight.
Thank you everyone for coming, and we hope you learned a lot.
Yeah, and if you have any questions, you can contact our team through larryoc@d-c.org, which will be put in the chat.
And then also a few of the other panelists have also given their contact information too.
You can find the information of the experts in the chat if you would like to further contact them afterwards during your season.
And for those that are watching this on YouTube, I'll edit the description later to include the contact information too.
So thank you all for joining us.
Thank
And thank
you.
you all